welcome back to the Jinlong Technologies Solis Inverter YouTube channel. This video will be about using the inverter buttons, LCD screen, and internal menus to adjust the inverter standard. For example, setting up the inverter to operate on a North American grid standard as opposed to a European grid standard. And today I will focus on one of the choices in the standards submenu, user def or user defined. Now, when you choose this standard, you will be given options to change the upper and lower limits of the grid voltage and frequency allowed by the inverter. Warning here, technicians must check with their grid connection provider for the allowable upper and lower voltage and frequency limits. Okay, to start the process of changing the grid standard, we will use the menu to turn the grid off, and then we will change the standard and turn the grid back on again using the buttons and submenu. Okay, so to get into the menu, you can always press enter here, and that'll give you the 4 submenus, and you can scroll down using the down button to advanced settings and enter this menu. This is where we will do our work. Now, the password for advanced technicians is 0010, so again, guys, you can use your down arrow key to move the cursor over to that third position, change it using the up arrow key to a 1, and then press enter. Okay, so now you can see you have 2 choices here. We're going to again use the down arrow key to move to grid on off, enter that menu, move down to grid off, and press enter. The inverter will now cycle. You'll see the operation light go off, and you may see the alarm light come on indicating that there's no grid. However, what we need to do now is then select the standard. So let's go up to select standard, go into there and see what we have it set at right now. Well, right now it's set for the UL North American standard at 240 volts, and you can see the -A there indicating the AFCI board is enabled. So now that the grid is off, I can go into set standard just using my arrow key here, and then I can scroll through the menus, cut, and now that I'm in the standard menu, I can use the up and down arrow keys to scroll through these scroll through the standards until I find user defined. A lot of different types here. Australia, Europe, Mexico. There it was, user defined. We'll now enter that menu. Now, in this menu, you'll notice that we can change not only the limits, the trip limits, but we can also change the trip times. And you will note that there is a 1 here after the V indicating voltage. That indicates we're going to adjust our intermediate trip limit and trip time. And then when we see a 2 there, that means we are adjusting our absolute trip time and trip limit. So here we are for our overvoltage of the grid, our intermediate trip limit of 260. Well, we may find that some particular site is running a little high on voltage, and so we may want to increase that a little bit. So we can enter that menu and increase that to, let's say, 263. The buttons work a little funny here. We'll set all these later on, but right now use your escape key to go out. We can go down to the intermediate grid voltage trip time of 2 seconds, and that sounds good. Per IEEE, that sounds pretty good. So we can now go down to the overgrid voltage absolute limit, and this is set to 280 volts, and we have that set to 0.2 seconds. We want the inverter to trip out very quickly if it ever hits this absolute limit. IEEE gives us some guidance around 0.16 seconds, so we could actually enter this menu here and then adjust that down to 0.1 seconds to be well within the IEEE limit. So escape again out, and then we can go down to the next setting. This one is under grid voltage. This is again 1 here indicating our intermediate limit. So 210 sounds good for 2 seconds, okay. And then we have our absolute limit set for 180 volts at trip time of 0.1 seconds. That all sounds good. All right, so now frequency. Here's our over-grid frequency set for 60.5, set for 2 seconds. That also sounds pretty good. And then we have our absolute limit of 61.5, set for 0.1 seconds. Again, trip time. That also sounds good. Here our undergrid frequency is set for 59.5. We want it to trip out after 2 seconds. And then our absolute undergrid frequency, we have that set at 58 for 0.1 seconds. All right. So these next two are the startup time and the restore time. Restore refers to internal inverter functions, but that startup time here in the United States is 300 seconds, not 120 seconds. So let me get that set up here. Okay, so after setting our startup time appropriate for the jurisdiction in which you're located, you can scroll back up to the top of the menu here and confirm that indeed your overgrid voltage at the intermediate level has been reset to 263. That's where we want it. So then we can escape out of this menu, and you'll see that you have two options here, save and send and cancel. So if these are the settings you want, you can enter that and save your new settings. Then you can go down to grid on off again and go in here, turn the grid back on, and now we can be assured your new settings are saved. So let's escape back out and to the main menu, and we can see that now the inverter is going through its normal startup period.